So I'm Diane Connors. I'm with Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities, and Groundwork Center's role with 10 cents a meal is doing communications, outreach, and advocacy. And so we want to tell the stories when you all are selling into schools and early child care centers so that we can keep the spotlight on the impact that's happening with schools and early childhood centers purchasing locally grown foods. So please be sure to share those stories with us. And I'll also introduce by name some of our other staff at the end to know some other ways that you could engage with us on 10 cents a meal. You want to go to the next slide, Garrett? So, it is 10 cents a meal for Michigan's kids and farms, but today what we want to talk about is 10 cents a meal for farms and for local food vendors. And I'll talk a little bit about what 10 cents a meal is, how it works, and some of those market opportunities that we're seeing for it that are really growing. And this is a big year for it in terms of growing. Next slide. Yeah, so what it is, the history on it is that you may know that it came from the Michigan Good Food Charter. It was one of 25 recommendations of the Good Food Charter, basically to see what kind of a difference would a dime make for schools to be able to have for some extra funding per meal to be able to purchase Michigan grown foods. And so we had a pilot project here in Northwest Michigan first, and then statewide, and now it's become a statewide program. So next slide. So what it is a state of Michigan program. It's administered by the Michigan Department of Education. It's a budget line in the state school aid budget every year, and it's matching grants to buy local fruits, vegetables, and dry beans and put it on the plates of our kids in schools and early childhood education centers. And as many of you may have realized, schools may not be able to afford the same prices that four-star restaurants can afford, but they are a consistent market. They are feeding kids every single day, and so they can be a very steady market, and often in any community they are in, they're actually the biggest restaurant in their community effectively. So next slide. So how it works, that money that the schools and early childhood education centers have in grants, they can buy fresh produce, they can buy minimally processed produce, so chopped, if you have a facility where you can chop it in carrots into carrot sticks or carrot coins or something like that. It can be frozen, is also considered minimally processed. You can wash and dry lettuce and bag it and get it into schools. The only thing that is not allowable is cooked processed foods. So and the way that it works is that schools, they purchase from you. They are going to be providing information to the Michigan Department of Education, and there's all kinds of information we could tell you about that. But one of the key things that you might want to know is that they do need to upload information with a contractor called Farm Logics, and Michigan Department of Education contracts with Farm Logics. And so they need to be providing, as you'll see here, the name of the farm, the location that that farm is in Michigan, the product that they purchased, how much they spent. And there are distributors and food hubs and others who can actually deliver the product. If you don't want to be the one delivering the product, there's ways to aggregate product from smaller farms together in farm co-ops and food hubs, as I think you'll also learn a little bit later. So there's different ways, and you can also do it farm direct. But either way, any of those ways, they do need to have some invoices that show them this information so that they can provide it. And when they provide that, that's how they get their match grant funding. Next slide. So who can buy? In the past, you may have known that this the name of the program was 10 cents a meal for school kids and farms, but it's now 10 cents a meal for Michigan's kids and farms. And that's because it can be purchased by K-12 schools. It now can also be purchased by early childhood education centers that participate in the child and adult care feeding program and by youth residential care institutions. And so the key is that they need to participate in the USDA nutrition programs, such as the National School Lunch Program. With COVID, we've had more of the summer meals program and also the child and adult care feeding program. So, and that is where typically the buyers have their match funds for their purchases. So next slide. So this is just to show you a little bit about the impact of this. This is for the last full pilot year. Last year was an odd year because of COVID, but basically this doubles the state's investment. And it doubles the state's investment in Michigan's economy because most of the match funds are from federal school lunch dollars and childhood education dollars that they already have for food. It means that federal dollars stay in Michigan's economy and they stay in our local agricultural economy. You can see that there was much more demand for the program than there was funding for it in this year. And so that's why we've been working to increase the funding for it. And and to have it be able to go statewide so that we really can grow the experience of schools around the state and early childhood education centers and grow the market for the farms and other local food vendors in our Michigan food system and supply chain. So next slide. Again, this is that last full year of the pilot program and what this map shows. And this is where that invoice information comes into play. It helps us to tell this story. But all of the dots that you see, the black dots, those are the school districts that were participating that year, where they were located. The light green squares are all of the counties that had farms in them that the invoices showed had business. And it might have been farm direct again, or it might have been from a distributor that the school purchased it from. And so that was you can see the numbers there that year we saw that 93 different fruits, vegetables, and beans were purchased by the food service directors, and that came from 143 farms in 38 counties, but 20 additional businesses that, there's a lot of opportunity for really collaborating across the food supply chain. At the very first slide, you don't need to go back to it, but I had a picture of Tantra Farm, which is down in Washtenaw County. And when we wanted to tell their story, they said, well, we haven't gotten into schools. And they only thought of farm to school as being selling directly to a school. But we said, well, we see your name in the invoices with the Cherry Capital Foods distributor. So we know that you were. And he was thrilled to realize that. So next slide. So this is how you can see that it's been growing over time at the state level. And that's because there were people in each community, including farmers, who reached out to legislators and said, this is something that's important for our state, for our kids, and for our agricultural sector. We really want to see this program here. And so we were working to build it. You see that it was $575,000 the last 2 years of the pilot program. And if you go to the next slide, ta-da, we are now statewide. It's available from Detroit all the way up into the UP. There's $2 million in funding for it now. Early childhood educations are newly eligible for it as well. So we're seeing that there's promise for farms of many varying sizes, because you may have very large districts that may need some larger capacity. But early childhood centers are ripe for much smaller farms often. So it's really good to make those kinds of relationship connections. Next slide. This is a quote from our state superintendent, and you can see that he sees this as a win-win for the children and for supporting the state's growers. And I'm gonna, on the next slide, you'll see some of our other staffers who are working with us on this, but Nathan Medina is one name you will see there. And he has extensive experience in Michigan's House and with other legislators. And he has quotes from legislators all across the state, Democrat, Republican. They see the value of this. They see that this is win-win for getting fresh food for kids and for building our economy at the same time. And so I encourage you to get to know Nathan also, and know of ways where your voice really and truly makes a difference. You're highly regarded by legislators, the agriculture community, and so be sure to speak out about that. And I'll just close if you want to go to the last slide. This is our contact information. I'm doing a lot of storytelling these days, getting back to that. I want to do the success stories that we see out of this and really elevate 10 cents a meal so that it becomes sort of embedded in Michigan's identity, that Michigan invests in both its kids and its agricultural sector and gets local food to its kids in schools. Nathan is our real policy expert and knows how to connect you with your legislators to let them know that you think it's important. Melanie Wong is doing our social media and our website. And please make sure that you see that 10centsmichigan.org. There's lots of resources there. And you can share about the program also if you do social media, and be sure to tag us at 10 Cents Michigan, and we'll continue to tell that story. So that's what I've got, Garrett.
All right. Thank you so much, Diane. Great information. That background is really helpful to kind of set the context for what brings us all here today. And just can't thank Diane and her team enough for all the work they've done over the last 4 or 5 years or more to get this from a pilot program in Northwest Michigan to now $2 million in our state budget. It's just a testament to the tireless hours that you all have put in. So we really appreciate all of that. So moving on, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna get into some information that hopefully you all found very helpful to hear from some farmers and some different food vendors, as well as a local school district that have implemented these 10 cents program in their school. And they're going to talk to you about, really how much it has benefited their farmers, how they've gone about working with schools, and vice versa. So let me just share a different document here. And all right. So our first speaker and kind of our panel lineup here is Beth Kavanaugh, who's, whoops, auto, of course, auto shifts, who's with Petoskey Public Schools, has been a 10 cents a meal grant receiver for a number of years, I believe, up there in Northern Michigan. And she's just going to kind of share with us her experience working with local farmers through the 10 cents a meal program, and just some other, I think, tips and tricks for farmers that are looking to work with schools. So Beth, I'm going to pass it over to you, and just let me know when you need me to shift to the next slide.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Beth Kavanaugh from Petoskey School. I'm the food service director. Yes, Diane, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit today. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So for Petoskey, Farm to School became a hot topic back in 2012-13. Multiple questions were running through my head. The first one, what is Farm to School? Purchasing direct from a farm, how safe is that? Are farmers a preferred vendor? Do they have a sanitizing wash station? What does that look like? What additional sanitizing and wash stations do I need to purchase in our kitchens to make sure that the product is safe for our students? What additional expenses will there be? What additional training do my employees need? What are additional labor costs? Will the farm deliver? Will they have enough products that I need? The list just went on and on. So I was very thankful when David from Coveyou Farms reached out to me in 2013. I placed a small order with him and nothing more. I was still skeptical. Our students didn't respond well, and we were on a tight budget. I was not ready to commit to purchasing from local farms. In 2014, I was confronted by a teacher that was part of a support group for Farm to School. At that time, the group did not understand the food service rules and regulations, and I decided to join the group, and it's now called Petoskey Area Parents for Fresh Food. Over the years, we have partnered with the Health Department of Northwest Michigan, Groundwork Center, Local Food Alliance of Northern Michigan, the MSU Extension, Local Food Courts, Cherry Capital Foods, Grain Train, Natural Foods Market, and Smarter School Lunchroom. These groups helped me capitalize on my farm to school efforts, as well as apply for the 10-cent per meal pilot program. Working with area farmers and utilizing farm photos to showcase their product in our service line sparked our students' interest. Students started consuming the fresh farm products, and we have limited food waste. Next slide. As you can see on this slide, back in 2016-17, we had no 10-cent grant funding, and my purchases were only $13,000. Year to date, well, actually from August through January, I have purchased $43,000 in farm products. So it's my goal this year is to have 75 to 80% of locally purchased products in our lunchrooms, and I'm on that track, so I'm happy about that. Next slide. On my current farms, as you can see, I have a list of 27 current farms who all have something different to offer, and that's the nice thing about it. We do plan on including 2 more farms this summer in 21, and then through 22 and adding a couple more as well. Next slide. The farm products, there's a huge variety of products that you can get from farmers. And like I said, each farm is unique to what they grow and sell. So it's nice for directors like me to be able to pick and choose where to get that product from. The next slide. Here are some photos that we actually do take when we receive product in. We like to showcase the freshness of the product when it arrives. We have been known to print these out and post them on our salad bars so the students can see what it looks like along with a farm photo of where it came from. The next slide. This one shows our salad bars. And some students buy it as well, but we do take all the product and we slice it, dice it, shred it, anything that we can to it, and the kids really have enjoyed this over the last couple of years. The group there photoed is our group that actually gave our menu items unique names. They did that the year before COVID, so a couple of years ago, and we will be carrying those names through to this coming year as well. Next slide. So we took our 10-cent per meal program a step further, and with the help of the Health Department of Northwest Michigan and Groundwork Center, we created our Try It Tuesday program. Trained volunteers conduct an educational hands-on sampling program in 40 elementary classrooms. Volunteers receive a script about the harvest of the month, feature along with samples. Students interact by asking questions and answering them, and they have 3 simple agreements that they must follow. One is don't yuck my yum, take a no thank you bite, and we will try it together. The students then get to vote on whether they loved it, liked it, or tried it. And the more loves and likes, the more times the menu is repeated on, or the more times the item is repeated on the menu. This program has encouraged our students to sample all kinds of items, ranging from raw vegetables to homemade sugar-free applesauce, to Valentine hummus, beet hummus, and to parsnip mashed potatoes. Some of the positive outcomes and stories that we have to share is, there's a huge reduction in food waste with an increase in student consumption of fruits and vegetables. This is not only noticed by the lunchroom aides and the principals and cooks, but by the custodial staff. They actually have been known to grab my arm and walk me over to the trash can to show me the minimal waste inside that can. There's a secretary who is hesitant on trying herb-roasted squash fries when we had them for Try It Tuesday. She didn't even know what herb-roasted meant. Now herb-roasted vegetables are the only vegetables she makes for her family on a daily basis. There's a student who has claimed Friday as Try It Friday at home for dinner. She cooks with her grandmother on Friday after school, and they make the recipe of the month for the family to try. Everyone must take a bite and they vote, just like at school. On numerous occasions, I have been stopped by students and parents in grocery stores asking me for the recipes of the month. I walk the students and parents through the produce section and show them what to purchase. Next slide. This is just a sample Try It Tuesday recipe with the information that we do hand out to parents. This also goes home in newsletters and on the back of our menus. Next slide. This is a picture of our sampling for Try It Tuesday. I believe it was carrots this month, and as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner is our Try It box, and we do have little cards for the students to put in that box, just like they are, voting behind the screen. So it's actually really neat. Next slide. So where is Petoskey Food Service now? Well, as you can see, I worried over nothing back in 2013. Yes, trying something new is challenging, but success happens by taking baby steps. From August through November, and most of the time into December, I don't worry about our food costs. Our students are consuming farm fresh fruits and vegetables, and that is our main goal. Food districts, food service departments in schools try to stay below 41% food cost. Our current year-to-date food cost is 33%. So I'm very proud of that. It's held stable all year. In 2019-20, when COVID hit, we stopped purchasing from the farms just because we were unsure of all the unknowns. So we did stop with that. I think we can go to the next slide. Sorry. Oops, yes, that's right. In the summer of 2020, we started purchasing from farms that included fresh vegetables in our summer feeding pickup bags. We sent home recipes for parents to make with their children, along with the Harvest of the Month flyer. We received overwhelming positive feedback and loved hearing the stories about Brussels sprouts growing on stems. So thank you, David Coveyou, for allowing our community to see this. It was a real highlight with our students and parents. So the screen is tips for farmers to work with directors. Be persistent. Food service directors are afraid of the unknown. Have a list of food service director references ready for directors to contact. Meet with directors in person to go over what you have to offer along with quantities and pricing. Contact districts outside of your county. There are districts who want to be on board but are in other counties, and they are unsure of delivery and pickup and are hesitant to reach out. Work out a delivery or pickup schedule in advance. If districts are too far from you, meet halfway or schedule to drop at another district to hold until the director can pick it up. I can't tell you how many times we have done that for some other area directors. Offer farm tours. That was a huge bonus for me when we went to go visit farms, is actually seeing the sanitizing process and the wash stations right there. And the email weekly offerings of what is available, that has been a huge plus as well. Next slide. And I also did put on here tips for directors to work with farmers. Prepare a list of what you're looking for, including the quantity. Find out what product is at its best during what time of year. Tour the farms to make sure it meets your expectations. Ask your farmer questions about the product, the size of the product, so you know how much you'll need to order, how the product is washed before pickup or delivery, and ask the farmers if they have suggestions on how to prepare an item so the students will like it. We have done that numerous times, and our students have fell in love with those recipes that farmers have given to us. Start small, take baby steps, try one item a week. There's no reason to rush and offer everything from the farm on the salad bars like we do now, all within a month. It does happen over time. Next slide. I am available at any time if anyone needs to reach out to me for any reason. Please call or use my email. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Beth. Really appreciate that. It's great to hear all the great work that's been happening at Petoskey, and awesome to hear your journey kind of starting out in 2012, 2013, not really knowing what farm to school was, and now being a local champion for farm to school efforts. So appreciate all the work that you've done. All right, and now we're going to move on to hear from some of our farmers who actually have worked with Beth. Before we do that, before I hand things over to Dave, I did just want to let everybody know if you do have questions throughout anyone's presentation, feel free to drop those in the chat. We've got some folks monitoring the chat box that will let us know if we have anything that's come up. We do see some folks with a hand raised. If you have your hand raised, want to ask a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. That would be great. And we'll see if we can't get that answered for you. We will have lots of time for questions at the end of everything, but if we can answer things as we go along, we'll definitely be sure to do that. So, all right, Dave, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Super.
All right. Just let me know when you need me to advance the next slide.
You can probably slip to the next slide. I only have a few slides, everyone, so we're gonna you may get tired of looking at the same picture. But so for those of you who don't know, I'm David Coveyou, Scenic Farms here in Petoskey. This is one of the old historic farms, been around 140 plus years. We're a certified organic vegetable farm, growing for the local community. Roughly 25, 30 acres of production, so we're kind of medium size, if you want to think of it that way. And then selling on our on-farm into restaurants, CSA, as well as farmers markets, retail stores, institutions. Basically, like many of us farmers, you're trying to find every way we can to sell more produce, realistically. And quite honestly, my start really digging into farm to school started, it was probably 15 years ago. I was amazed to hear Beth say, it was like almost 10 years ago that we were working on getting started. But I ran into the challenge here on our farm with our scale of saying many of my customers are tourists, just like for many of us farmers, and they start going away come September. But realistically, our fields are still producing really, really well. And some of the best produce is ironically available September and October. And so my challenge was, well, let me start reaching out to schools to see if we can move some of this great produce into the school system. Obviously, it seemed like a really good fit at the time. And so I started knocking on doors, and lo and behold, I realized, boy, this is gonna be a little tougher than I thought, because across the board in many different school districts, I knocked on doors. It was a little bit of hesitancy, or maybe a lot of hesitancy. And then I'll be honest, I stumbled on a wonderful lady down in Boyne City, and this is 15 years ago. Kathy Fruget is her name, if you know her. Absolutely wonderful lady who's now retired. And she said, you know what, I really want to see if we can make this happen. Let's work on this. And lo and behold, back then we have a whole bunch of high tunnels. We're growing year round in those years. So I had carrots growing in those high tunnels, and we would be digging carrots out, washing them, and getting them into the Boyne schools, and the kids loved them. And she said, wow, this is great. Fresh carrots literally coming out of the ground. And this might have been January or February, I forget what it was, middle of the winter. And she said, these are great. And she kept building the program, winter squash. And she even invited me to a couple of these lunch lady meetings where they'd get lunch ladies from around the different groups to share recipe ideas. And I said, wow, here's someone who's just truly passionate about wanting to have food, good, healthy food in their cafeteria. And I found that that's what it takes. That's the key to breaking that door, is finding a food service individual, an inside salesperson, if you will, who says, I really want to make this happen. And we kept growing the program there. And then she retired, and then it was you kind of fell by the wayside. But at the same time, I started knocking on Beth's door at Petoskey and a few other doors. And like Beth alluded to, it was a little tough. It was a tough sell early on. I'll be honest. Here we're a local farm. We're in Petoskey, and Beth, I think I always got the impression really wanted to do it, but I always said, Petoskey's with Chartwell's, big organization, food distribution company. That's got to be the tough part. And then it was, well, here's all this paperwork or requirements. How do you get through the food safety challenges? And lots of discussion. That was seemed like it was a year or two or something like that. But we had to have these discussions back and forth. But I kept saying, well, it doesn't hurt to ask and keep knocking and keep trying. And for us as a farm, we're kind of to the point of saying, well, we're obviously certified organic, but then we were also getting Gaap certified. We have a written food safety plan. So I could answer a lot of those questions that Beth was asking of me and saying, yes, we have that and we can do that. Yes, we have this, we can do that as well. And by the way, yes, I feel really comfortable that our food is safe. And show it to everyone and show what we're doing to everyone and let me know where we're falling short. And lo and behold, we started building this relationship that turned out to be really, really positive. And over the years, we keep growing more produce. Beth keeps cooking more, it seems like, and the Petoskey schools keep providing more. And so it's a healthy relationship from that standpoint. And it helps us as a farm really because it's an avenue to move a reasonable amount of produce to in a time when our sales are going down to the tourist population. So it helps balance that out. And it's a good fit, I think, for regional farms, probably all through the area that are kind of similar to what we're doing. We're not really doing anything out of the ordinary. We do grow a little bit of everything though. And maybe you flip to the next slide, since you're probably getting tired of looking at that one, which is green, by the way, but a little bit of everything. And that allows us to provide a little bit of everything from the salad greens to the peppers, the onions, the broccoli, the cauliflower. Lots of tomatoes, different types, including lots of cherry tomatoes, which are the easy sell, if you will, for kids, I think. But there's been a lot, whatever Beth asks for, we've just putting on a list. It's just like our main wholesale list, everyone else, and she's picking off of it. And then we're kind of working it right into our normal system that we would sell to a restaurant or a retail store or something like that. So it's all fits into the same model we have. But from my standpoint, the key thing here is that persistence, but then also recognize that you need to have those conversations with the food service directors to really understand what they need from a food safety standpoint, that they feel comfortable, because obviously I kind of view it, everyone I worked with, they want to be serving healthy food, but they want to do it safely as well. And we as farmers have to be able to convince them that what we're doing, how we're growing, and what we as small farmers are operating in a food safe fashion, which for many of us who are providing food into the community, like myself, I feel comfortable saying that. We just need to be able to communicate that clearly to food service directors around the area that is how our farms are operating these days. And then the next thing I'd like to throw out there, and this is probably something for the food service folks to talk about too, is I often found that my perception over these years of kind of beating my head against the wall was there are a lot of food service organizations out there that have been doing the same thing the same way for a lot of years, and they're really comfortable with that. They've got it down well. Their whole staff has got it down well. And then this is just kind of like upsetting the apple cart a little bit. And it takes a little retraining, a real learning, and a willingness by the food service directors to say, yes, I want to do this because it's important to the quality of the food getting into our kids. And that's that inside passion. I can't understate it enough is what I found in where I made a connection, because I'll be honest, it's easier to just buy something pre-made and reheat it in the kitchen, I'm sure. versus dealing with, even though it's healthy produce, there's more prep work. I'm sure there's more other work involved. And the amount that people shared great recipes, and that one of these lunch, they call them lunch lady meetings, was just really inspiring to see different food service directors and staff sharing with other food service directors and staff from other communities what they were doing and how they were cooking, and like what they did with their butternut squash or their acorn squash, and how they got it so they didn't have to peel it, so they didn't have to do this, so they could do it quickly, efficiently, and mass produce it. Those discussions, just observing them, was really inspiring. And there's a lot of knowledge in this food service industry that could share to help grow the whole movement. And the easier it is for food service folks to prepare it, I think the more they'll prepare it and use it. And so as we as farmers, I know we can produce, whatever they can sell through, especially get the storage crops. So that's we may go to the next slide. I'll share just one other little tidbit, is that this last summer we participated in something called the USDA Farmers to Families Food Boxes. And this is not a program that's 10 cents a meal. It's a different program. I'm just going to put it out there for all the people in the school food service area to be aware of. This is basically a box that goes out to families in need. And what I'm seeing across the country as I participate in this more is that schools are becoming more of that central point of getting healthy food into families at home, as well as during the lunchtime meals. And they're being able to identify families that are of lower means and getting them healthy food. And so this is one of the box programs that's been out there over this last summer. It's being reviewed now to continue into this next year at some level and some capacity. But if you ever hear about it as a food service director and want to explore it as a way to get healthy food into the families in your community, just keep your eyes and ears open for it in the hope of the months and years to come, because that may be another avenue to get healthy food into families. Granted, it's not the 10 cent a meal program. It's not for being made in schools, but it's being distributed through schools. And we've shared and sent a lot out to Petoskey regional families through Beth and through a number of other schools as well this last year. I just want to make that aware of it as well. I probably have used more than my allotted time, so I apologize for rambling on, but happy to answer any questions here as well as time goes on.
All right, thanks, David. Really appreciate it. Been to your farm, and it is as beautiful in person as it looks in those pictures. So really appreciate you taking some time to share with everybody your experience. And it's great to hear that, to see the closing the loop of hearing from Beth and also hearing from a farmer who's been working with her and those different perspectives. So really, really appreciate that. All right. If anybody has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. And if David wants to answer those as we go along in the chat, that's great. We can also hold off and, we're cataloging questions that come in, and we'll have them available at the end during the kind of Q&A time as well. So, but we're going to keep things rolling here and move on to our next speaker. So we have Rosebud Schneider, and I'm not even going to try and say the name of the farm. I feel like I butchered it the first time, but farm and Minogen Market, which is I think up in the northern Michigan area, and have also worked a little bit with Beth at Petoskey. So Rosebud, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, take it away.
All right. So good afternoon. My name is Rosebud Schneider. I am the farm or market manager for Ziibimijwang farm. Don't feel bad, Garrett. I had to practice before I took this job because I couldn't say it either. And Minogen Market. So Ziibimijwang is the tribal farm for Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa. We're located in Carp Lake. And our store Minogen is in Mackinac City. We didn't open last year, but we do have plans to open this year. So that's super exciting. You can go to the next slide. So I just have some pictures and some, folks can ask me questions or whatever. This is part of our front garden. Obviously, our main focus is to provide produce and other indigenous food products to our tribal community, but that, you know, also extends out to just about everybody. You can go to the next slide. So Ziibimijwang is committed to restoring and strengthening the Madzuin of the Odawak community through a foundation of indigenous food systems and cultural activities. We are a nonprofit and we are 100% owned by Little Traverse Bay Band. You can go to the next slide. So our goals, like I mentioned, provide food sovereignty within Little Traverse Bay Band, improve health of tribal citizens by providing healthful food and engaging in active participation in growing and gathering food, provide education opportunities for tribal citizens, and provide subsistence opportunities for tribal citizens. So COVID obviously threw us a curveball and we weren't able to do a lot of in-person or really any community engagement this past year, but hopefully we'll be able to gather a little bit going forward. You can go to the next slide. Our involvement as far as farm to school goes has been very limited. I think from our perspective, I mean, it was really great to hear from Beth, to hear, you know, what she deals with as far as, you know, from the purchasing side. And I think for us, it would be helpful to know, you know, going forward, if schools were interested in working with us, we would need to know probably, you know, now, because, you know, although we are a year-round farm, we do try to plan ahead. This is just mine and KK's second season here with Ziibimijwang, so we're still learning and getting organized, and we've grown quite fast. But we obviously, our priority is to the community, and getting into schools would be great. We worked a little bit with Nathan in Boyne Falls, I think a little bit with Pellston, and then from my perspective, you know, as a parent and as a consumer, I obviously want to see more fresh food, you know, being offered to my children. So, and then, you know, my thoughts and my questions were what as farmers can we do to make it easier for schools to purchase, and, you know, how does packaging work? What about the prices? You know, things like that. You can go forward. We do have quite a bit of infrastructure and are set up to grow quite a bit. So we are on 100 tillable acres, and we're probably growing on maybe, this says 6, but I think it's been expanded to, I think we're at least 10 now. We have 2 heated hoop houses, a greenhouse, 2 tunnels, pole barn, pump house, propane heat. At Minogan, we've got, you know, walk-in coolers. I have the ability I have a vacuum sealer, so I have the ability to preserve. I'm hoping to get a freezer very soon, so I'll be able to freeze food. I know that providing fresh is always a priority, but sometimes if we, as farmers, and especially, you know, if we're able to preserve on our end, that's probably a good option too, to have like frozen or dehydrated or whatever. You can go forward. This is an old slide that I've had from another presentation. So this is just our wonderful crew that we had last season. You can go forward. This is again the start of our last season. We were preparing for a a freeze coming in. So that's KK covering up some squash that we had planted. You can go forward. One of our main focuses is again, like I mentioned, is our indigenous seeds and crop varieties and things like that. So here we grow a lot of corn, and it's the dried flint corn that we use to process and make like hominy and cornmeal. This year we were able to, I think we grew about 900 pounds of dried corn, and it's all gone now. We used all of that and made cornmeal and hominy and provided that for folks that were getting vaccines. This, in the last few months, we were working really closely with our tribal health clinic. So it was really great, but we're all out of corn now. So we'll have to grow more next season. You can go forward. More pictures. I'm sure if you all are in the area, you know that, carrots are one of our top sellers. I didn't like carrots until I had our carrots, and I'm a believer now. This is just in one of our hoop houses here, and you can go forward. Again, like I mentioned, we carrot convert. Again, we focus quite a bit on our indigenous seeds. Corn, beans, and squash is a pillar of our 3 pillars, if I can say that, to our diet. So that's one of the main things 3 main things that we grow here. Pictured here is the corn that I grew last year. That's a Red Lake dried flint corn variety. The Gateocosamin squash is pictured on the left. That is a wonderful old heirloom variety. And then on the right here is our scarlet runner beans, and those are dried beans. You can go forward. Like I mentioned, we've got Minogan Market in Mackinac City. This will serve as a place for us to sell our produce, in addition to being at farmers markets and things like that. And we'll be able to carry our produce. We'll also, my goal is to work with other folks, other indigenous food entrepreneurs, or any indigenous entrepreneurs are looking for places to sell their products. We work with local artists to bring in some of their jewelry or arts or things like that. I work really closely with the American Indian Foods program, who works with other indigenous producers all through North America. So we'll be highlighting quite a few different products for this season. You can't see it here, but we do have a kitchen and like a carry-out window. So that'll be open this season. I'm planning on working with some local chefs and also other indigenous chefs in the area for pop-ups through the summer. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about that. There's quite a lot of potential here to be a hub here at Minogan. For storage, we have freezers, but we will have freezer space. We have a walk-in cooler space. So as I navigate my time here at Ziibimijwang, I'm learning that we're set up for to do quite a few things. I just need more people. Can't do it all by myself. You can go forward. Just a couple of our products that we offer. We KK will tease that we grow everything from A to Z. This picture was taken last season, and this was probably around this time. Our greens and radishes. And then in addition to our maple syrup, we also produce maple sugar and maple cream and candy. We also have wild rice. Seasonally, I try to keep that on hand all the time. But one thing that we have learned through this pandemic is that the demand is very, very high, and I've run out of just about everything. But yeah, good problems to have. You can go forward. This is a picture. Let me see, what was I doing here? I made, did a food demo and made a white fish dip using white Arodawa beans that we grew instead of dairy, and submitted that for, I can't remember what I was doing here, but this is just a picture of some of our indigenous foods that we made. I think I made a tea out of that cedar and sumac there. You can go forward. We are at farmers markets. So right now we are in Boyne. Every Saturday we'll remain at Boyne going forward. As market season opens up, we'll be back in Petoskey, in Charlevoix, and I believe Harbor Springs. We're still waiting on that confirmation. You can go forward. So any questions, you can reach me at minoganmarket@gmail.com. We also have a website. You can order products online. I will be adding more choices than just being shipped through UPS. Now that we're moving into our busy season and bringing some of our workers back, we'll be able to offer delivery and local pickups. And once farmers market season opens, that will be a place to pick up boxes. So yeah, that's all I got.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosebud. That's amazing information. It's an awesome operation that you have. And it definitely makes me, think about the fact that when farms are talking to schools about selling to them, that there's so much more you can bring to the table other than just your products. Like there's an educational components. I think, Beth said farm tours, bringing people out to your farms to learn about your operation and see the different aspects and what it really, kind of what's behind you as a farmer, that can help develop those relationships and really solidify the purchase relationship that's important. But beyond that, there's a lot of other things around a relationship development with a potential buyer, especially schools that can really benefit farmers. So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Nick Welty, are you out there somewhere?
Yes, I am here.
All right. You are up next. I've got your slides inserted in here, so feel free to just let me know when you need me to advance.
Great. Yep. Just a quick introduction about me. I am Nick Welty, and I grew up on a farm in Ohio. Moved to northern Michigan in 2006. Started farming here shortly thereafter. My slides are going to be, I'm really happy that Dave covered what he covered in terms of the perspective of a farmer trying to get into the farm to school sales avenues. And I'm looking at this largely from the perspective of the work we've done with the MI Farm Cooperative and how we can work together to get products into schools and sort of share resources. So go to the next slide. So about the cooperative, it is a producers cooperative, and a little bit about what that means is that it is a farmer owned, farmer directed, and farmer shared resource. I like cooperatives for many reasons. The decision-making process is cooperative. So someone like myself that likes to move fast, it does mean that the decisions are slowed because you want to have everybody's input first. But it is directed for the benefit of a cooperative, and it gives us the ability to be more profitable. It also gives us a voice and control over our own sales and distribution. So one of the main things for me, 2010, 2012 timeframe, I saw a need for our farm, but also among many other farms, that to have a profitable farm, you needed to be selling direct. And in many cases, farmers are highly skilled at producing a product that their farm has been geared towards. And they may not be as skilled or as adept at all of the avenues involved in sales, aggregation, and distribution. So by reaching out to a number of local farms, we can pool the skills that we have together to create the sales and distribution for our local schools. The cooperative began pretty much 90% or more of our sales were driven through school purchasing. And that is something that was really a backbone for the cooperatives from 2015 all the way up until last year. So I can't overemphasize enough. You saw on Diane's slide sort of the history of the pilot programs that have happened in our region, and we were definitely perfectly poised to take advantage of that with many food service directors willing and looking for products from our farms. And by having a cooperative, it made it far more efficient for smaller farms to bring their products together. And I guess we'll get to that at the end. So another thing in my work with the cooperative, also being involved, owner of 9 Bean Rows, and we run our own farm, but we have commercial kitchens. We have processing equipment that was brought in from a farm to school grant. And we do, peel, slice, dice, shred fresh produce so that it is more quickly and easily usable to the local schools. Because in this whole formula of having a couple of dollars to spend on a meal and knowing that upwards of half of that is going towards labor, and oftentimes the produce that's coming from a small farm will not be as clean and ready to use as something that came from Gordon Food Service or Cisco that a food service director might be used to. So in order to try to limit the labor cost, we've provided access sort of through 9 Bean Rows in a vehicle of the cooperative. Now, it's also important this cooperative nature takes a essentially shared risk of everyone and trust among everyone. So it increases the profitability of all of the small farmers working together, knowing that we're all trying to get the truck full, because the full truck is what makes each of us more profitable with the delivery routes we run to the schools in our area. So sharing information, being open with everyone within the cooperative, knowing that we are sort of competitors in the same arena. And really, it works well within a cooperative when the farmers know that by us working together, the rising tide that we create will lift all of our boats. So farmers who are not as cooperative minded won't find the same level of profitability and success if you're not willing to be open with your neighboring farmers. And the other important thing about how a farmer cooperative works is that you are not selling to the cooperative, you are selling through the cooperative. And really every farmer who participates owns the cooperative. They own their product through the cooperative and all the way to the school. And really we're all responsible for the efficiency and profitability of what we're doing. And so from all of those aspects, I think it's a very good system for farmers to understand their responsibility and maintain a direct connection to the schools while using shared distribution that can be done at a lower cost than each of the farmers driving their own truck to the schools. Next slide. I was hoping to have quite a few farmers here today, and I wanted to give a little bit of a pitch as to why I see farm to school being important for farmers and what has made it very important to our cooperative and successful to get our cooperative started. Now, in the winter time, in northern Michigan in particular, it's difficult to find customers. Most small farms in our area find that our profitability is driven by the tourism that happens in northern Michigan. And as Dave said, starting right about the time school starts, all of our high paying, loyal tourist customers disappear. And there's two marketplace gaps to help the cash flow of farmers make it on a 12-month basis. One is this incredible surplus and variety of produce that we see in September and October without having tourists in the same volume on hand to purchase it. Being able to move that into schools can really help farmers. There's so much that can often go to waste in a fall surplus if you're not planning for it. And if you're planning for it with a local school, it can be a fantastic way to get that product used up and have more profit coming back to the farms. The other difficulty is finding ways to have product available. And the deep parts of the winter, I threw up a picture of one of our hoop houses, and that can be important, but it can be difficult. There's levels of work that goes into having product available, and hoop houses can be important. The other really important thing is the stability. And, farmers face a lot of instability, but knowing that food service directors have an extremely captive and stable amount of customers that they are serving with the number of students on hand, it sort of allows for more precise planning and known demand levels because of the stability of schools. Now, there's small ups and downs with holidays and snow days and things like that will impact the sales. But I found that relative to the economic forces that can shift our other marketplaces, schools tend to be, quite the stable avenue to sell into once you establish a positive relationship. Once again, with us having multiple farms in a co-op, it gives a single point to establish that reliable connection to these schools. The other important thing, and I think it needs to continue to be communicated to farmers in Michigan, is that as 10 cents is expanding, it's a horse and a cart. And now that we have a bigger sales avenue, we need to make sure that more farmers are aware. And it's worth spreading the news to your neighbors and sort of letting other farmers know that we want to make sure that we can keep up with this demand, since we've been supported by our state legislature and our state leadership at this point to keep this marketplace going. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about the hurdles and what we've seen in terms of what it takes to keep a steady supply of crop throughout the school season. You guys can look at that picture there and try and guess what on earth we were trying to do there. But from our history, having a multitude of farms with a wide range of different products, apples are, sort of a backbone to our farm to school sales. And it just makes sense. Sometimes the things that are obvious will show themselves. Apples can be grown very well throughout the state of Michigan. They can be grown competitively with anywhere in the world price-wise. Apples store extremely well without having to go to excessive lengths of processing. So knowing that you have access to apples, in our experience, has been very important to keeping the trucks full. They're available for the perfect time of year. They're ready when school starts, and with a mix of different varieties and storage, great quality apples can be supplied for the entire school year. But above and beyond that, Diane listed the great number of different products that are going into schools now, and we definitely see a great number of different products going out. But with each pallet full of apples that we're loading onto the truck, there might only be a few boxes of other items, and while those other boxes might contain a couple of other different types of vegetables, apples are still easy to use, easy to handle, and they're naturally ready to eat. Next slide. So the hurdles to be aware of. Crop storage, we're going to be using this for the majority of the time of the year when farmers don't have product available. The crop storage you see in the picture there is a very cheap and sometimes effective means of storing crop, but the harvest costs can be quite high. That's one of our workers digging carrots from under the snow. But having a plan for storage, through our cooperative, we have supplied storage needs for a number of our different smaller farmers that didn't have the ability to store crops throughout the winter time so they could get them to the schools. Much of Michigan is spread out. Places where there are more dense populations, it can be easier to have affordable distribution. But we have a lot of miles between stops, and the stops are at, schools that might have anywhere from, 100 to 400 meals being served. So that can be something to consider in terms of how much can be, dropped off at each location. And that's where we found that having a variety of products from a variety of farms helps. And working together to share that cost has made it pretty darn efficient. We've definitely been increasing in our efficiency of delivery each year. Also, just being aware of what the menu limitations are for the schools you're working with. Talk to them, understand the menus they like to serve, and make them aware of the products that you have, and see what can work into their menus. Most food service directors that I've worked with like to plan ahead, and that's great for the farms because we can plan ahead together. Also, knowing that there's things that you can do to limit the amount of cost it takes for the staff to handle your products. Have it clean, have it easy to use. With a cooperative and, being able to aggregate and provide services to smaller farms, we've even been able to bring on farm members who didn't have, top of the line wash pack facilities, and we can bring in products and, clean them up and make them presentable so that the schools can use them in an efficient way that's not burning up their labor costs. Now, diversity of crops is very important, I think, going forward. Apples are easy, and having access to apples and apples on the trucks is great. But I think that more cooperation with more different processors is going to continue to increase the volume of sales by having the accessibility of different products increased by processing them better for the schools. Next slide. So just a word about stability, coming off of a year of great instability, I suppose. But farmers and food service directors, both face instability. Farmers are used to it. It's part of the job of farming. We have the weather patterns going up and down, and market forces changing, and any farmers who have to sell to larger commodity buyers and processor buyers have pricing instability, and it's something that we learn to deal with. But there should be places that we can turn to where there is some stability in hand. And our experience through this last year, COVID may have had some impact on the instability, certainly, but the instability of uncertainty when the 10 cents was initially vetoed was probably more significant to our connections and sales to schools even than the COVID impact had been. Once again, apples are fantastic in brown bag lunches, so that kept us moving along. But uncertainty was certainly very hard on our farm to school sales, and really coming up till just this first quarter of 2021, we've seen our sales levels come right back in line with what we would expect to see them to be to our local schools. So it's really remarkable, and it's awesome for all the farmers to see the state leadership beginning to provide that stability again. And from my standpoint, this stable, ongoing support is going to be crucial for keeping the marketplace moving the way it has been and increasing it. Next slide. So just closing with a little thought, because throughout this entire experience, when I first began selling into schools, I'm a parent of children eating school lunches, and I look at farm to school as not only an avenue of increasing farmer profitability and farmers' ability to cash flow their operations 12 months of the year, but this is, in my mind, one of the best educational opportunities we have. So seeing that over 400,000 Michigan students are going to now have the opportunity to connect with local farmers, understand their food, how it will make them healthier, how they can eat and learn about different foods. And really this level of support that we have now, if we keep this going at least at this level for 12 years, those students who experience that, potentially having a couple of meals a week with, their local farmers' food in it that they can learn about, it will change the way they eat, they view their own health, and they understand the world around them. So I see the educational potential as just tremendous. And, it makes me happy as a farm to be able to participate that. And with our cooperative, being able to help farmers funnel together and become part of that entire system. So certainly happy to answer any questions too about cooperatives, how they work and setting them up.
All right, Nick, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing all of your thoughts. Some really great information there for farmers that are interested in selling to schools, as well as interested in jumping into something a little more cooperative. Really appreciate also the big picture you ended with there to let us hear about, to bring it back to, this is really important, not only for local farmers, but also students that are in some of those schools. So. All right, so moving on, next up in our train of speakers here, we have Gavin from Gavin Orchards, based down here in Grand Rapids area.
Pretty.
Can I mute somebody? Oh, muted them. Okay. Eric, are you out there somewhere?
Yeah, I'm right here.
All right, perfect. Eric, this kind of brings me full circle because I think one of my first farm to school presentations from a farmer that I sat through was maybe from your dad, Mike.
Probably.
Gavin. So yeah, excited to hear your perspective. And I don't think we have any slides, but that's totally okay. And we'll just let you take it away.
Okay. Just a little bit about myself and my farm. My dad started a farm to school probably over a decade ago. While I was in high school, I came back. I was off the farm for a while, and actually the farm to school program is what allowed me to have a job back at the farm after we had a freeze for a year. So a little bit about my farm. We're about a third generation. We grow majority summer squash, and we do about 50 acres of apples, and another about 40 of them are non-bearing yet. So they're just younger apples coming up. We've been very excited to see the growth of the 10-cent program throughout. We started off being pretty small apple grower. We only packed for ourselves, and throughout the whole 10 cents, we've actually become more commercialized on packing apples. So not only does the 10-cent program help us, but it also helps other growers around where we are from, because we custom pack for them as well. So my dad started this probably in 2010, 2011. And then we partnered with Cherry Capital. And I was doing a lot of the deliveries through that. We had about 5 to 15 schools per day. We did our own delivery for a number of years while Cherry Capital seemed to be growing. Once they got to a certain area and had enough trucks, we kind of just started to deliver to their hub and allowed them to deliver apples to the schools. Truth be told, the delivering to the schools was probably one of the funner things that I did, interacting with the food service directors. And just like Beth said, I remember about my second year, I talked to a custodian that said how much less apples he was seeing on the ground since we started delivering with them. That 10 cents a meal impacts a lot of what we do. Just like in that 2019-2020 school year when we didn't know if we were going to get that grant or not, we did see a slowdown in sales. But since the this school year and everything with COVID and everything, we have been starting to see those sales come back up. We also sell peaches to Cherry Capital, which goes to schools. And then, let's see what else we got. I thought I had some pictures up there so I could talk a little bit about that, but that's pretty much all I had on that.
All right, perfect. Well, no, appreciate you sharing your experience, and also sharing about, relationship with Cherry Capital and the ability to partner with a local distributor, a local food provider, that's invested in this program as well, and really helping make that connection between your farm and the schools that you're serving. So really appreciate it. And if we have questions come in, kind of more specific to your experience, we'll make sure we get those passed along. And I think we have just one more speaker in our kind of testimonial part of the program. So I'm going to pass it over to Brandon Seng from Michigan Farm to Freezer, who's just going to tell us a little bit about their program that they have there and how really they've benefited from the 10 cents program as well.
Great. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, great. So yeah, Brandon Seng with Michigan Farm to Freezer. Mark Coe, who's my partner in the business and helped us start it, is on the line here too. But we started this the product about 10 years ago when I was running a school lunch program in northern Michigan, and when I was running this lunch program in Manistee, and a 14-year-old came through my lunch line and had never experienced a blueberry before. At 14, and this is just an issue of where they, their family was able to do their grocery shopping, was more at food pantries, where they got their meal at school was with me. So at that point, I was really hard on myself because I had the opportunity to serve that child a blueberry in this first experience for a while, and I didn't, and I was toying with the idea of this because I also ran the farmers market, starting a school lunch program that featured local foods, and that day I made the call to Mark, and we started sourcing from some area growers and bringing product into the school for us to share with that population, and that has grown now into a much broader product line. Now I want to talk to you today about the economics of what we've seen through 10 cent. But I wanted to start with that story because it's very much a part of why we still do what we do. So if you can go to the next one, I think that's a shot of the first broccoli field that Mark and I were able to purchase and secure for processing. And all of that product went into schools, but we also pushed some out into retail. So if you can go to the next slide. This is our retail product line, and the way that we balanced this kind of two sides of this coin was we wanted to continue our effort in sales into institutions and schools. Retail provided us with a little bit better margin, in what institutions did was really provide us with that security that Nick was talking about, and the volume that we could use to drive our efficiency up and our cost down. It costs us the same to run 3,000 pounds of product down our line in a day as it does to run 1,000 pounds of product down our line in a day. So that the more that we can do, the cheaper our product can get, and schools provided that security and that larger volume sale to help us drive those costs down. And in every other year, it was we never thought like, well, we're always going to have these relationships with schools and they're always going to be there. And then 2020 hit, and oh my God, it just got turned off overnight. So thank goodness we had a foot in each pond where we had the opportunity to shift a lot of our volume into retail, and sales at those retailers really took off for local products. And I feel like that's, you know, a lot due to the fact that the pandemic just laid bare the issue that we've had in national, you know, food supply chain. In that, you know, now we've got product that's caught up in ports and it can't get to the folks that need it. And on the other side, we've got, you know, institutional supply chains that are just throwing away product, empty shelves on the other side. And we really, you know, saw a great surge in demand on that retail side. We were able to shift our line quickly to get product bagged up on that side. But now, with 10 cent being available in here, we're seeing a surge of demand with schools opening on the institutional side. So but on the other side, the sales at retailers hasn't gone down. So historically, we sell about 1.5 million pounds of product a year that we freeze and process in our facility. And we've shipped over 150,000 pounds more than planned in the first 3 months of this calendar year, all to schools, all to 10 cent recipients. So it's a huge swing for us in terms of volume and product out the door. And that really wouldn't be there without this, you know, this grant and this opportunity for our state. So we want to be there for those schools because we want them to use the money and we want to keep getting that money. But we need other farm partners in that with us because we just don't have the supply in our small facility to meet the kind of surging and growing demand of the state. So when you know, Diane asked that I speak to this group of growers, you know, I'm excited to bring more people into this and help support in any way that I can the growth of this network, because, you know, we now need more supply on the side to meet what we're seeing, you know, right now in the market. So if you can go to our next slide, I think that's a shot of our facility. Yeah, so this is the facility that we're in. It's 14,000 square feet in Detroit's Eastern Market. And here we can push about, you know, 3,000 to 6,000 pounds per shift down the line. So it's really kind of that center section of the food system that we're looking to build out. Not the super, you know, large commodity products, but more of the specialty items that fit with the kind of needs of the consumer and for institutions. So what we'll do is try to, you know, provide unique items, you know, different blends and medleys that make it easier on the school lunch personnel, because I was, you know, at one time on the other side of that service line, and I know what it was like to get, you know, a couple thousand pounds of carrots in from the farm. We're able to bring those into the facility, wash them, dice them, freeze them, and provide them then over the course of really, you know, 10 months to make sure that we've got, you know, so we've got that supply and we are extending that season. So we are, you know, one of several, you know, components, I believe, of a season extension program, where we're able to stretch that over the course of the winter time, because I mean, it is, you know, right now not a lot available, you know, that's growing and a lot of need from, you know, from schools. So the, you know, thing that I want to talk a little bit about the supply chain that we've been able to tap into and use, and encourage folks to think, you know, differently about this than just, well, you've got to sell to, you know, this network or this distributor to be able to get to your end customer. The schools that we work with in our network are our customer, and we build relationships directly with those customers, and how our product gets there varies from customer to customer, depending on what their needs are and where they're getting their food from. So in a lot of cases, you know, we work with schools, and I'll take Traverse City as an example. They needed, you know, a couple pallets of product brought up to their central commissary to be distributed to the different schools in their network. we knew there was a truck that was coming by our facility that was heading up there, and we just booked it on that truck as a backhaul for $50 and got the product up to the school with some regularity. And in that supply chain, it was a good deal for that distributor, because they were coming to the facility anyway, and they were heading past East Middle School anyway. So we've tried to map out and figure out, kind of creative and unique ways to get our product. And if there's a truck that's going there, like Nick said, full trucks are what we're after too. So if we can throw a pallet onto a truck and get it somewhere for a lower cost than running it ourselves, I mean, that's what we're going to do. And what we're finding is that network exists. Those trucks are out there, and it's just a matter of figuring out which ones are going where. A lot of times it does make sense for us to work directly with the distributor, like Cherry Capital or LaGrasso Brothers to manage those accounts, but that's not always the case for, we've got a school out in the thumb that nobody can get to. So we've coordinated with some other growers, brought product into our facility, and we're sending a truck up there. So there's a lot of ways for us to figure out how to knit the existing infrastructure together in a way that meets this need. And I would encourage you to talk with those schools and find out who's coming there now, and then figure out a way of partnering to get product there, and certainly talk to the folks with those relationships like Cherry Capital and others to see where they've got extra capacity to help move some of this stuff forward too. So I think I've just got one more slide. And that's a shot of our strawberries. I can't close, a conversation without a picture of those strawberries that came out of Manistee County. Something that we're entirely excited about is minimally processed local foods available year round to folks in Michigan who need it. And the kids that are on the other side of that service line are the kids that need it, because what continues to drive our business today is, I'll be damned if there's going to be another 14-year-old who doesn't have access to a blueberry because I didn't serve it or provide that opportunity for it to be served. So with that, I'll close, and I'll have some time for questions, and I'm always available if folks want to talk, and I know Mark is too.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that, and appreciate you really kind of drilling into some of the economic impact that 10 cents has had for you and your company, and your ability to serve students, and really be able to have a successful business because of that economic impact from this program. So schools can be a really important customer for farmers. Absolutely. All right. So if anybody has questions, again, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm hoping that our speakers will all stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes before we can get to kind of a general question answer. We've got a couple more slides here that myself and my colleague Abby Harper are going to go through, just with some more general tips, resources, things you should just kind of keep in mind when selling to schools and ECE centers. So I'm going to hand it over to Abby to go through some of these slides, and then we'll get on to some just kind of more general question Q&A opportunities for folks. So, all right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Garrett. And I know we're hitting the 1 hour and 40-minute mark, so I'll make this pretty quick. Just want to provide some kind of general context for what to think about when starting to approach schools in your area if you're doing that. So you can go to the next slide if you want, Garrett. I kind of just wanted to present this as your goal is really finding that product nexus that meets both farmer constraints and school early childhood constraints. So from the farmer side, you want to think about what kinds of things do you like to grow? What are you set up to grow efficiently in large quantities, and kind of what products are your most cost effective? And then you're trying to find products that also meet school constraints. So schools are interested in products that they might be able to receive in a usable form, products that might be cost competitive locally. Now that's a little different with 10 cents because they've got a little bit more cash flow to be able to afford products that might be a little bit more expensive than what they would typically be buying. They're looking for farmers that can supply appropriate quantities and that their staff are skilled and able to process and prepare. So I'll tell a quick story about my early days in farming. About 10 years ago, I was on a startup farm that was around the corner from the elementary school where I went. And we thought this is such a perfect relationship. We should be working with them. And the farmer I work with dropped off a bushel basket full of potatoes that we had just dug on their doorstep and awaited their call. Now, we were in our early days of not having great mechanical cultivation. So all of those potatoes were dug by hand. They were covered in dirt, and the way we would sell them in the farm stand, you know, like not caked in mud, but needing processing. And we dropped a bushel off for a pretty robust elementary school. So that elementary school food service director saw this basket of potatoes and thought, what the heck am I going to do with one bushel of potatoes when they were used to receiving potatoes in a product in a form that was more ready to just kind of dump in a dish and go, whether they were pre-washed and chopped or things that didn't require their staff to use a lot of extra labor to get that product into their meals. So that relationship ended pretty quickly. I think both of us for a couple of years after were blaming the other person. You know, we were saying, we gave you these free potatoes, how could you not want it? And they were saying, this farm has nothing that we can work with because we're not gonna go through that extra level of processing. So I know a couple vendors earlier mentioned apples as being kind of one of those secret magic products, because most schools are serving apples as a whole apple. It's not requiring an extra level of process. There are things that if you're growing apples, you're growing them in pretty large quantities, and the cost is pretty comparable with somebody who might be getting it from a broadline distributor. And so you're not going to be asking a ton of additional labor from a school or an early childhood program to be able to take that product from how you would normally harvest it without asking extra labor of you to the place where they're going to be able to serve that on their food line. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that different programs are going to have different constraints. So we've introduced schools as a market, we've introduced early childcare institutes as a market, and we've introduced residential childcare institutes. Those all vary in scale and in their capacity. So if you're working with a very small early childcare program that's maybe utilizing products in their education, they might want things in their full form that they can have conversations with their kids about and might be willing to do that extra prep because they're probably doing some level of prep anyways. If you're working with a school district that feeds 10,000 kids and really needs things to be streamlined, you're going to have to work to find those products that you produce that already are in a form that they're used to receiving. So you can go to the next slide, Garrett. So again, a big part of it is just determining which markets are right for you. And I'm going to put a quick link in the chat to just the page on the 10 cents a meal website that highlights the districts that received funding. So that's a good way to just find schools in your region that received funding through this program and connect with them about what their needs are. Thinking about finding a scale of a school that matches your farm scale. So again, if you're a medium scale farm that's producing larger quantities, you might be able to work with a larger school district. If you're kind of, smaller and more of that direct to consumer facing things, you might be able to find a smaller early childcare program or a smaller district to work with. Understanding and having upfront discussions of processes and procedures. A lot of this is just getting people on the same page so that you're not, several weeks into the relationship, realizing that you both had promised each other things that you couldn't commit on. So making sure there's clear transparency around delivery expectations, how products are going to be received, schedule of payments. Some schools have more flexibility than others with how frequently they can distribute payments. And again, asking yourself those questions collectively with anyone you're seeking to build a partnership with of what do you grow well that you can grow in larger quantities. And again, want to encourage you to not over compromise on price. When I used to work as statewide farm to school specialist, there were farmers that would get really excited about a school customer and kind of drop some of their prices to get in the door and then realize that it was actually costing them money to maintain that relationship. And that just set up expectations down the line for things that neither could commit to. So just making sure that you have clear expectations and clear communication throughout the process so that you can find those things that work for both of you. I promise you there are products for every school district that will work. It's just sometimes a part of that process of figuring out where you can meet in the middle. And the last thing I just want to encourage is to be bold. I think one of the things we get into with these relationships is both school food service directors and farmers are super limited on time. And so finding those ways that you can communicate with each other that get quick turnaround for most folks, I find that's text or call. A lot of both food service directors and farmers aren't sitting at their emails waiting for something to respond to, right? So that tends to be something that isn't as quick and doesn't get as quick of a response. But to just be willing to reach out and connect. I've talked to a couple schools that have received funding in the last few weeks and months that don't even know where to start looking for farmers and don't even know where to start having those conversations. So being willing to take that initiative and start that conversation first is going to get you in the door. You can go to the next one. And then the main tip is just to be prepared when you do have that meeting, have a good sense of what products you're able to grow and kind of in what forms. And again, being open and honest and upfront about those, making sure that any institutions you talk with have the capacity to follow up or learn more, either via your website, your social media, other methods that you typically use to communicate with customers. The other thing that tends to be really impactful is having field trips that go both ways. So farmers go to institutions, learn about their processes behind the scene, learn about what tools and what processes they have for turning food into usable forms. And then for schools to go to farms as well and have that perspective of how growing happens. I know Garrett's going to talk a little bit about talking about your food safety plan, but sometimes just that being in the other space and understanding the constraints and opportunities can help open some new doors. And then also encourage you to think of schools as kind of a marketing opportunity. I forget, there was a grower I was talking to somewhere in Southeast who, through his relationship with the school, was able to build awareness in the community of all the other ways that he offered food. So parents of those school children were then able to find him at the farmer's market or through his CSA. And it kind of had a multiplicative effect beyond just the purchasing that the school was doing to build some of those broader community connections. So thinking of this also as an opportunity to tell your story with a broader audience can help you kind of promote further and then also get more receptivity to those products when they end up on the food service line because kids have more of a connection with you. You can go to the next one. Again, I mean, these are all kind of standard, but just upfront having those kind of standard sizes and standard cases and that knowledge of delivery and payment arrangements upfront so that you're not surprising each other after the fact. I think that, having an expectation that is not met puts an immediate damper on a relationship versus understanding upfront what the constraints are and coming to that agreement together of what the process will look like. And then you can just go to the next slide. And then just a plug for supplier expectations. Not all suppliers are limited by requiring different kind of certification plans and things like that. But most suppliers will be interested and expect some sort of food safety plan, some consistent packaging and labeling, something that they can depend on and expect. And I think Garrett's going to go a little bit more into how to think about food safety and how to market your food safety plan.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Abby, for that quick rundown of lots of things to think about. I think that really kind of brings together a lot of the things mentioned in the different presentations into a nice little package there. So really quickly, I'm just going to run through some resources and I'm going to ask maybe Abby to drop some of these links in the chat as I go through. So there's lots of resources out there for farmers, for suppliers, for institutions looking to make these connections and develop these relationships. So a great first place to start is the Michigan Farm to School website, which you see a screenshot of here. Lots of different resources on there that you can take a look through, resources that are specific for farmers, resources that are specific for institutions, for eaters, lesson plans, all kinds of different stuff. It's a great place to just go to learn more about farm to school in general. Hear some stories about the different initiatives that have been going on, and just ways to connect. Another great resource, as we've been mentioning as well, is the 10 cents for Michigan website. So they actually have a specific page of that website under tools for farmers, links back to the Michigan Farm to School website, other resources that we have here in the state of Michigan. But that breaks it down by, connecting with, marketing your products, how to kind of do things on farm related to farm food safety, and getting your farm ready to be able to sell to schools. So lots of great resources there as well. And again, these links are all being dropped in the chat, so you should be able to click on those if you want access, or just do some Googling. These are two specific resources that can be found on the Farm to School website that I wanted to highlight. The first is Marketing Michigan Products, a step-by-step guide. And this is a little bit older resource, but it still has a lot of great information. Really talks through a lot of the things that Abby was mentioning around how to get your marketing materials ready, how to communicate with schools, kind of better understanding the language that school food service directors use when they're talking about their products, and some of the different programs where they have funding. So that's a really great primer to just kind of wrap your head around what selling to a school might look like. And then I also wanted to point out this Hoop House production and marketing guide. We've heard a lot from our different speakers about the seasonality in the state of Michigan and growing food. And while we are do have challenges to growing year round, we are making a lot of advances in season extension and growing in hoop houses. So there's definitely opportunities there. And this is a great resource that actually goes through specific crop plans for products, different what you want these products to look like, or grading out these products specific to selling to schools. And this all came out of a program called Hoop Houses for Health, which was really focused at increasing season extension use by farmers and making that connection back to selling through schools to kind of offset some of the costs for those season extension facilities. So two great resources there that I definitely recommend you check out. Oops, wrong button. There's also the National Farm to School Network that again has an amazing resource. These are resources compiled from all across the country. You'll see some Michigan resources in there if you could take a look around. Lots of great work being done in farm to school all around the country in states that aren't Michigan. And this is a great place to look for resources that are just general communications with schools, food safety, all kinds of different stuff. And you can kind of search by different settings or different institutions. Search by keyword, all sorts of different ways to find resources. If you're somebody that just likes to talk to a person instead of go out and search the webs, there's lots of people we have across the state that can help you in your journey to connect with schools or to sell your products to local schools through 10 cents. We have a number of us that work in the role that Abby and I fill with MSU Extension as community food systems educators. And here's a whole list of all of those folks. I will make one correction that Julia Darden is no longer in that role with Extension. She's been promoted to a district director level position. So while she still works with Extension, she's not one of our community food systems educators. However, there are those of us that work in all areas of the state. We kind of cover statewide as well if there's any specific questions, but that's a great place to go to learn how to connect with schools, just help you develop those relationships. Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities, obviously Diane mentioned that her and others that work there are great resources for connecting with schools. Michigan Department of Education has folks there that work in this farm to school space and help administer the 10 cents a meal program, so they can be another great resource. And then obviously MDARD, Lori Yelton is kind of our contact there who works on issues related to farm to institution and farm to school. So this Michigan Farm to School Serving Up Local Foods is also a resource that can be found on that Michigan Farm to School website that has all this contact information as well. And then I did just really want to briefly want to talk about some farm food safety considerations. So you've heard some things said. David Coveyou was talking about being Gaap certified and selling into Petoskey Public Schools, which is a Chartwell school. And Chartwell's is a large food service management company that works with a lot of schools across the state. there is some considerations when you're selling to an institution, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, that you may want to be able to show some food safety certification, whether that's Gaap, whether that's a third-party Gaap certification. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be Gaap certified to sell to a school or to an institution. I think a lot of farmers might hear that is a requirement, and really it's not necessarily a requirement. It may be for that specific school district or that specific contract food service management company, but it's not a requirement. So if you're not Gaap certified currently, don't completely write off selling to a school or an institution, because there's a lot of other ways to show that you take food safety seriously beyond just getting a Gaap certification. If Gaap is something you're interested in, we do have a ton of resources here in the state of Michigan around Gaap certification. We have this amazing program called the Michigan Group Gaap Network, where you can actually reduce barriers to the cost of getting a Gaap certification, and also find a lot of technical assistance resources through this Michigan Group Gaap Network. And I think I saw Phil Britton on the call, at least I did earlier. If he wants to drop that website in his contact info, he's kind of our state lead for the Michigan Group Gaap Network. So beyond Gaap, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of communicate with institutions and schools about your food safety practices. A great start is having a food safety plan, something you can actually send to a food service director to say, this is how we tackle food safety on our farm. And there's lots of great resources out there as well about developing a food safety plan, bringing a food service director or food service staff onto your farm to show them around. As I think Beth from Petoskey mentioned, that seeing a wash pack station, seeing where what a farm looks like and how they handle food safety and what standard operating procedures they might have on their farm, it just kind of gives them that peace of mind to know, okay, this farm is taking food safety seriously, and we feel comfortable buying from them. And just really knowing how to talk about food safety on your farm, how to communicate about it, how to let food service directors know that we do take this seriously and it's important to us, is really, really important. And I think that might be all I have, and we have time for questions. A little bit of time, 3 minutes. I did see some questions flowing out in the chat earlier, and I saw some folks responding to those. So I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions that weren't answered yet? I know we just threw a ton of information at you, and it's probably going to take a little bit of time to process. And
Garrett, there was a question thrown out about learning from the growers if there are unique considerations they have when it comes to connecting and supporting early child care centers. So for any of those on the call that have sold to early child care centers, I saw Nick chimed in a little bit about how it's different on their farm, but anyone else who wants to speak to that maybe?
Yeah. Anybody else? David, Eric, anybody else that's on the line? Farmers have any experiences selling to any of those ECE centers or home-based daycares?
I can chime in really quick. Some things that we've heard from ECE folks is that just on the scale that they're buying, often food produce from places like Meyer that indicate that they are Michigan grown. That would qualify so long as you keep your receipts accordingly if people were to buy from a farmer's market. So that would qualify as well. So the smaller scale purchases, we know that they are a little bit more challenging for folks to sort of build up and scale, but they do exist, and we just kind of have to meet those folks where they are. So that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. And just I saw Melanie also chimed in the chat that ECE centers are oftentimes lower volume than maybe schools, so it is a great opportunity for farms that are interested and potentially selling some smaller volumes to those local ECE centers.
I've also worked with ECE centers that will subscribe to a CSA or something like that, buy a few shares of a CSA and get their stuff that way. So there are a lot of ways to connect with those audiences beyond thinking you have to have, a case of uniform, whatever. There's more flexibility there. So in reaching out to some of those that are on the website, just keep that in mind.
And just for folks that are interested, we are recording this. This recording will be shared on both, I believe, the 10 Cents website as well as the Center for Regional Food Systems website. So it'll be accessible for sure out there. Once, if there's anybody you know that missed this or wasn't able to attend, or you want to go back and kind of refresh some of the things that you learned. And Nathan, I'm seeing a question getting reposted that was, because I do think we did miss it. Could somebody discuss why Michigan grown, raised, processed grains and meat are not eligible for 10 cents?
Sure. So the legacy of the program, I think from what I've heard in the past, again, I'm relatively new to the program, but I think it might have to do with processing issues and capabilities. I'm not quite sure. Since this is a program that was a pilot, I could see that they had to narrow it as a matter of scope. But that's probably something that could be revisited in the future. Nothing is necessarily set in stone because it's a piece of, it's not a bill, it's just language in the budget. So they can revisit that year after year. So maybe in the future, that's something they will consider.
Yeah, perfect. Any other questions or comments?
This is Diane Connors again, and I just wanted to thank Abby for putting in the link to the About page on the 10centsmichigan.org website. That page will periodically be updated because we have some new grantees coming in. So I do encourage farmers to check that out and make sure that you see all of the different grantees as they come in there. This has been a little bit of an unusual year where there's been a little bit of a gap, and so there could be some new opportunities there. And then there's also the opportunity thinking about for the following year, even if you don't see someone who's close by, now is a really great time to reach out to schools and early childhood education centers that do participate in the child and adult care feeding program. So right now it's centers and not home-based daycare. That could change in the future. But right now is a great time to get them thinking about it. They could buy sample products from you and give it a try, and having them try those products with their kids gives them information that then they'll be prepared when the new grant application comes around to say that they've actually got some connections. They do know where they can buy some of these products. They do know that their kids like it. And if you can provide them with any posters about yourself or anything like that, that also helps grant applicants for the grant score higher, because they need to do that kind of promotion so that the kids really get exposed to what Michigan growers grow. And just know that the kids really do taste the flavor difference. And they love things like the multicolored carrots that local farmers can grow and things like that. So
additionally, one last note to chime on to Diane's comment. If some of you are visual, because some of the school district names don't necessarily remind you of a place, there's a map that is available on our website in the About section as well. So you can see bullet points that my colleague Melanie Wong has created that will allow you to sort of visualize where these entities are. So make sure you utilize that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining today. I think we'll wrap things up since we're just past 4:30. A big thanks to all of the folks that joined to learn, to speak and share about their experiences with this amazing program. Really, really important that we make sure that this program is successful and that these 10-cent dollars are being spent and going to local farmers, and local farmers are able to provide delicious, healthy local food for kids all across the state. So really appreciate everybody. And like I said, there will be a recording of this available. And yeah, we'll share that recording out along with an evaluation. And actually, before we jump off, Abby, do you have that common food systems evaluation that we could pop in the chat? Oh, might have lost her already. There it is. Okay, if you haven't jumped off yet, click that link in the chat. That'll take you to a really quick, I think it's, I don't know, maybe not even 10-question evaluation that will just provide us with some more info and help us out. So Appreciate that. And thanks, everybody.